Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about our country's insane immigration policy. This policy has flooded our country with tens of millions of immigrants over the last 60 years and with disastrous consequences for our country. The government and the media, they like to keep you distracted with illegal immigration and building border walls. Illegal immigration is a serious problem. We'll cover that and our unsecured border in Article 20. But today we're going to cover our legal immigration policy. This misguided policy includes not only immigration, but also the asylum, refugee, and work visa programs. And this combination has inflicted significant damage to our country and your future. Not surprisingly, you don't hear much about these, and for good reason. They don't want you to know much about them, because when you do, it becomes abundantly clear how low of a priority you and your family are. Unbeknownst to most Americans, the overwhelming number of the ever-increasing immigrants that have entered our country over the last 60 years, they haven't done it illegally, as you've been led to believe, but rather they've done so legally, thanks to our government's legal immigration policy that permanently brings in over 1 million new people to our country every year. And then on top of that, they bring another 5 million foreigners here each year to take your jobs through various work visa programs. Our government has welcomed about 50 million legal immigrants here since 1960, and this number doesn't include the migrants here on work visas. And they've turned a blind eye to about 11 million more illegal immigrants during this time as well. Legal immigration accounts for over 83% of all the immigration to our country, and it dwarfs illegal immigration, even though you barely ever hear about it. And when I get done with Article 15, it won't matter whether you're an immigrant that showed up in our country yesterday or your family came here 200 years ago. You understand why continuing this policy is a bad plan for your family. Now let's start with Article 15. We reject the notion that our legal immigration policy that includes the refugee, asylum, and work visa programs are helpful or necessary to our country in their current form. Our country can't provide opportunity for the people that are here already, as shown by our over $1 trillion yearly welfare expense, let alone over 1 million more that our government permanently settle in our country every year. We support reform that severely limits the amount of legal immigration and work visas. Now, if you're like most Americans, you're either an immigrant or a descendant of an immigrant. My grandparents came to this country as immigrants over 100 years ago. Immigration did have a place in our country for a long time. Opportunity and jobs were plentiful. You could support your family when you worked hard, and our country was experiencing real growth. There wasn't a giant welfare bureaucracy. The government wasn't responsible to ensure you had food, shelter, medical care, and spending money. And that meant that immigrants that came here had no options but to work hard, be productive, and succeed, or go back home. Now some people, they're going to tell you we don't need any more immigrants, legal or illegal, because most immigrants are coming here to get on welfare, or to commit crimes, or to bring illegal drugs into our country. And some are even terrorists. But that isn't true. Most immigrants aren't coming here to do that. Just like our immigrant ancestors didn't come here to do that. They're coming here to work hard and provide a better life for their family. And I don't fault them for legally doing that, and neither should you. But the problem is, America can't provide that better life anymore. The opportunities that created the need for immigration in the past are long gone, because of the implementation of one failed government policy after another over the last 100 years. These failures are the reason that we aren't even able to employ or provide adequate opportunity for the people that are here already. So the last thing we need is even more people. But instead of drastically reducing immigration to deal with these self-inflicted failures, our government, like on so many other important issues, they haven't gotten the memo. They want more immigration. But in this series, I'll prove the insanity of this program, as well as show that it really doesn't matter which party you elect to fix this problem. It doesn't get fixed. I'll also show you, in case you don't know by now, that the facts are the opposite of what they tell you on TV. Also, I'll disprove a few things that you've been misled to believe, such as this amount of immigration is normal or typical. It isn't. Or that our immigration policy is like most countries in the world. That isn't true either. When it comes to immigration, though, a lot of terms get used that make it easy to get confused. So in part one, let's cover some immigration basics and what are the different ways that people are able to come to our country to stay. Now let's start with two key terms, immigrant and migrant. An immigrant's a person that relocates from their country of birth to another country with the intention of permanent settlement. A migrant's also a foreign-born person that's relocated to another country. But a migrant isn't seeking permanent residence. Instead, they're only there temporarily. So the key difference is whether it's their intention to stay permanently or not. And a lot of times, it's hard for us to know that. So they tend to be called migrants when they first arrive. Both immigrants and migrants can be here legally or illegally. Legal migrants are usually here on a travel or work visa with a time limit for when they have to leave. Illegal migrants got here by either violating our laws and illegally entering our country due to our government's dismal effort to secure our border, or some came here legally on a visa of some sort, but then violated the time limit of their visa and never left. Of course, these are the same ways that illegal immigrants get here. But legal immigrants are here because they've been granted lawful permanent resident status by our government through various paths that enable them to come to our country to permanently stay. Lawful permanent resident status, more commonly known as having a green card. You get a green card by means of our immigration, refugee, or asylum programs. Having a green card doesn't make you a citizen. It just means you're here legally and permanently. Although it's normally the first step to citizenship to obtain a green card. Most legal immigrants got here by using our immigration system. They likely applied for entry to our country while living in a foreign country, were accepted, and legally immigrated to our country and received a green card. But others may have already been in our country on a visa of some sort, and they applied while here and were accepted. Other immigrants received permanent resident status by means of our refugee program. Now, refugees are citizens of other countries that have generally been displaced from their home due to war, natural disaster, or religious, racial, or political persecution. Our government agrees for humanitarian reasons to relocate them to our country through the refugee program. Now, some refugees, they aren't displaced from their home country though. While they're still in their home country, they claim to face the same safety risks, and they file with our government to come here as a refugee. If approved, they'll travel here and be granted lawful permanent resident status also. And finally, other immigrants are asylum seekers. Asylum seekers, they seek permanent residence in our country because they also claim to face political, racial, or economic persecution in their home country. But the key difference between a refugee and an asylum seeker is that an asylum seeker is already in our country or at our border. And they claim they can't go back to their home country due to fear of that persecution. There are three ways that asylum seekers can receive permanent resident status. The first way is called affirmative asylum. And this normally works in one of three ways. One way, a foreign citizen travels to our country and files for asylum at a border entry point into our country. The second, they cross illegally into our country and turn themselves into Border Patrol or a government office and request asylum. And last, some visit here legally on a visa, but after they arrive, they file for asylum to avoid going back. In all of these cases, it's very difficult for our Border Patrol or someone in a government office to determine if their claim is credible or not. So they're allowed to stay in our country until they receive an asylum hearing court date at some point in the future. So for the most part, they just have to travel here, show up at our border, request asylum. Our country is pretty much obligated to let them in and provide for them an asylum proceeding, all at your expense, of course. Now, affirmative asylum has been dramatically increasing since the data was released in 2016. And it's ballooned further after COVID. But we'll get into the numbers later. But keep this in mind, that today, for the most part, affirmative asylum is the new name for what we used to call illegal immigration. Basically, on your way to entering illegally, you stop at the border, find a border agent, and report that you're seeking asylum. And you're in. Now, another type of asylum is called defensive asylum. Defensive asylum seekers are here illegally, either by illegally crossing our border or by overstaying their travel visa. And once they're caught here illegally and facing deportation, they then claim their deportation hearing that they can't go back to their home country because they'll be persecuted there, and they request asylum. And believe it or not, our government every year grants thousands of people that are here illegally defensive asylum, even though they don't request asylum until after they get caught here. Don't ask. I told you this was insane when we started. Now finally, some asylum seekers are derivative asylum seekers. These are generally family members of asylum seekers. When an asylum seeker in our country is granted asylum, the rest of their family, for the sake of family reunification, is able to travel here as well and obtain permanent resident status as derivative asylum seekers. And finally, work visas are granted to foreign citizens so that they can come to our country to work. Now, there's certainly a role for a work visa program to deal with various cases where there's a temporary shortfall of a skill and some other cases. And to get a work visa, you have to have a job. Now, once here, lots of work visa recipients, they file for lawful permanent status, and they're often good candidates too because they have a job already. If they don't choose to file for permanent resident status at the conclusion of the visa, up to a 6-year time period, they have to leave. But like most good intentions policies, this one has also went awry. There's now a work visa program in place to replace almost every type of American worker. And they do replace every type of American worker. Engineers, doctors, professors, nurses, scientists, software engineers, agricultural workers, etc. You name it. Basically, if you have a job, there's a work visa plan in place to replace you with a foreign worker. The government calls the people here on work visas non-immigrants because they aren't here permanently. But they still live here, bring their families here, and they often displace Americans in jobs. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of the common immigration terms you hear. So as we move forward, this will all make more sense. But let's stop there for today. In part 2, we'll dispel the myth that our immigration program is normal. It isn't. We'll also see what countries, if any, have a similar insane immigration policy. We'll also take a closer look, based on past performance, at what political parties best suited for dealing with this problem. And we'll start to break down how and when our country got so off track on this topic. I'll see you next time.